Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Already today, we've done two stories about yesterday's men, Patrick Harvey and Henry McLeish. So we may as well make it, the sequel to the sequel. We'll make it a trilogy, because we're going to talk about a man who is currently still an MP, it must be said, but very much yesterday's man already. And that is, of course, Pete Wishart, a man of many years standing, but who has achieved virtually nothing in his entire career as an MP. But he still hangs around like a bad smell. Not for much longer, of course. Soon he will be, like so many others of his cohort, gone, history consigned to the dustbin, and never to be heard of again. And that's a good thing. But twice he has asked Humza Yusaf to come to Westminster to talk in this particular committee that we mentioned earlier when we were talking about Henry McLeish. And twice, of course, Humza Yusaf refused to come. And now he's hoping that he will get John Swinney down, because, of course, John Swinney, deeply involved in the SNP since time immemorial. And so if anyone knows where the bodies are buried, it will be Swinney. Literally. So we'll take a look at this to see if poor little Peter is going to be successful in his third attempt to get someone down who can talk to Parliament on his behalf. Let's have a look. So poor little Pete Wishart was rejected twice by Humza Yusaf over the Westminster appearances as a new invitation looms. Basically, he wants John Swinney to come down to go into this committee to give evidence and to tell people what's been going on and what the whole thing, the whole show about the relationship between the two parliaments are. Tell him their thoughts on Westminster, their thoughts on the Union, all this sort of thing. It's the 25th anniversary of the Scottish Parliament, of course, so they want this thing to be... They want it to be a thing. They want to make a big showcase of it. But a lot of people are like, don't really want to go because they might ask me some questions. And they don't want to be asked any sorts of questions at all, do they? Because, well, for the SNP, questions are difficult. Answers are worse. And so they're all trying their very best to run to the hills. Anyway, the SNP MP, Wishart, sent 2 letters to the former First Minister to plead with him to give evidence at Westminster, but was rejected twice. Although a new invitation is being written up now that Swinney has taken over. I wonder if Swinney will go. Again, probably not. It's too difficult for him. They start getting onto certain questions and things. They may turn it from one thing into another thing. The sort of thing where they'll be giving evidence against him. And, they don't want that. The SNP don't want the truth to come out under any kind of questioning. Anyway, poor Pete Wishart was rejected twice by Humza Yusaf, and he made requests for his now former party leader to appear in front of MPs at Westminster. The SNP MP is the chairman of the Scottish Affairs Committee, which scrutinises issues which involve Scotland, but are mostly reserved. Now, of course, just as an aside on this, Sturgeon was asked and said originally, OK then, and then, of course, she made the excuse, I'm not available, all of a sudden, just after Murrell was arrested. So, they none of them want to come down. They're all shady, aren't they? Anyway, last year, the group of politicians opened up an investigation into the relationship between the Scottish and UK government to mark the 25 years of devolution, as I mentioned. They are currently gathering evidence, which includes inviting all of the First Ministers and Scottish Secretaries to answer questions, although, in the case of Donald Dewar, they'll have to hold a séance. We previously told how Nicola... that's probably very bad taste, and I apologise for that, but, anyway, we previously told how Nicola Sturgeon was meant to be appearing in front of the MPs on Monday. I've just mentioned this, literally, but pulled out due to becoming unavailable. The change of status came just hours after her husband and former SNP Chief Executive Murrell was charged with embezzlement, of which nobody was particularly surprised. She did manage to appear at a lavish bash in London on the Friday night before her scheduled appearance. Yes, it was the big lesbian show. I don't mean it was a big show filled with lesbians. I mean it was a show filled with big lesbians. Val McDermott was there. Mr. Wishart insisted that Miss Sturgeon would give evidence and on as yet unscheduled date after the Tory leader Douglas Ross hit out at the last-minute postponement. Yes, she didn't want to be seen anywhere and questioned at any time, especially with Murrell carted away in a paddy wagon and locked up in... well, he wasn't locked up at all, but he was under deep, deep questioning again, wasn't he? Anyway, Yusaf has been invited twice by his SNP colleague, but rebuffed both invites, stating that he was too busy running Scotland to do so. Well, he seems to have a bit of time on his hands now, don't you think? Maybe he can pop down, have a quick word, waggle a tentacle. In correspondence seen by the Daily Express, the special advisers dismissed the second invite out of hand, with it being sent to them in mid-December and following the initial first invitation, which arrived back in July. They concoct an almost identical rejection while pointing out that Angus Robertson is being sent instead. Nobody wants to talk to Angus Robertson. Heavens to bid, you don't want to... Surprise, he's actually in the country, to be honest. Anyway, it said, attached is a draft response to Pete Wishart's letter inviting the First Minister to appear before the Scottish Affairs Committee. The draft reflects the approach to the previous invitations on the basis of the First Minister's extensive commitments, his accountability to the Scottish Parliament, and on this occasion the fact that Mr Robertson has already accepted an invitation to appear before the committee in early March to discuss its inquiry into intergovernmental relations. In other words, we don't want to do it, we're very scared of being questioned, we don't want to be held to account, and anything I can do to avoid being under the thumb and scrutiny of a Parliament over which they can censure me is something I'm not going to do. Oh look, he's holding a folder. Probably got looks like he's holding an LP, doesn't it? Something from the 70s. Bit of prog rock, perhaps. Not a chance, is it? Prog rock. And there's poor old Wishart, a man of very, very limited ability and a man of very, very limited achievements. And yet he has achieved so much. He's maintained himself sucking at the public teat for years on end. He's done well. I'm coming up. I wonder if Sturgeon will ever actually turn up, and I wonder the same about Humza Yusaf. They're under no legal obligation unless it becomes an official inquiry, but as it's not an official inquiry and it's just a committee inquiry rather than a royal inquiry, a royal scheduled one, they're under no legal obligation to turn up. They can be requested forcefully, which means that they can be censured for not turning up, but there's no legal requirement to do so. It's one of those really ancient things, goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, parliamentary rules and things. If they ever actually walk into Westminster, they can be called by the Sergeant at Arms, which is one of those things, again, hundreds of years old, but very, very rarely used. And indeed, you rarely see the Sergeant at Arms, which is how it should be, of course. Although I have seen people ejected, members ejected, and they're always escorted by the Sergeant at Arms. That's about as far as it goes. Anyway, be nice to see them up there, questioned, looking embarrassed, sheepish, ashamed. Never going to happen though, is it? Till next time, stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.